All right, so I can't tell you how excited I am to be here. And for reasons I'll get into it through my stream of consciousness, which is more of a rant than anything else. Thank you. I have to congratulate Joe for this, even for HammerCon and for the Military Cyber Professional Association even being where it's at. I met Joe in 2013 when I gave a talk at the postgraduate school, and he pulled me aside after the talk and he ran this idea past me. And then, it was great. I became active in the organization. I think I was the first chapter president for the National Capital Region. And to see it go from where it is there to where it is now is really kind of amazing. So the reason I'm excited to talk to this particular group is I feel for the first time I'm amongst friends. And what I mean by that is and the title of the organization says it all. It's the Military Cyber Professional Association. So what does it mean to be a military cyber professional? And if you hear many of my rants, and I'm kind of the loose cannon walking around the E-ring of the Pentagon, because I'm very clear of what I mean when I say military cyber and military cyber professional. And that is professionalizing cyber as a means and methods of warfare within the Department of Defense. So Mr. Inglis and what they're doing across the whole of government, and Jen Easterly with CISA, and there's a whole vast, huge community that is doing cybersecurity, cyber resiliency, all those things that we have to do as a whole of nation approach to ensure that we're survivable, resilient, critical infrastructure is protected, businesses can operate effectively and not be, have their intellectual property stolen by our adversaries. But the military is here to professionalize in the military side of the cyber problem. And that is delivering effects against our adversaries when called upon. I make the joke, if you look at most of the hardware the military has, what is I'll use the A-10 as an example because General Walsh is sitting in the front. What does the A-10, the Abrams tank, and the Columbia-class submarine all have in common? None of them deliver humanitarian aid, right? They are tools of our profession, of the military's profession, that deliver lethality. At the end of the day, that's what the military is all about, the delivering of lethality or the prevention of that lethality being delivered upon us. And we do that through the survivability of our infrastructure and our weapon systems. Of course, we don't want non-kinetic effects delivered at these things. But once again, it's about how we're going to deliver non-kinetic effects against our adversaries when called upon. And again, with General Kraft as an example, it goes well beyond just cyber. It's an IO problem. There's all the disciplines that exist within that organization. But I always go back to, my Clausewitz when we talk about this, right? We're all war college graduates, or most people here are war college graduates. We're all familiar with the line when Clausewitz says, warfare is the continuation of politics through other means. But earlier in that chapter, he says, what is warfare? Warfare is the application of force to compel my adversary to do my will, right? So then the question gets into what is force, right? We see the information operations area as more and more a means and methods of delivering force, right? Because we just got to influence people to do what we want them to do. And this is a domain we're seeing our adversaries professionalizing. Now, it makes it harder for us as cyber professionals to get the attention that I think that we deserve, and we'll talk a little bit about life in the Pentagon these days, is when a war like Ukraine starts off, and you immediately see a kinetic fight. We talked about the non-kinetic things that could happen and would happen and are happening. And then you've seen some of things go from fiction to reality. I think we've all seen the Live Free, Die Hard movie, right? When they blow up, when they reverse the pressure and they blow up and it makes the power plant blow up. We just saw that a couple weeks ago. That's no longer fiction. That's fact. That's possible. That's a way to deliver an effect against your adversary. And the thing that I think that the professionalization of this community is struggling with, and as I walk around the Pentagon, I formulated these 3 questions, and I've given these 3 questions to almost everybody in the OpNav staff, to include the vice chief and the CNO to one way, shape, or form. Which is, the first one is cyber a warfighting domain? And the answer to that question is yes now. And nobody pushes back on that question. Everybody, yeah, of course, Chris, warfighting domain, or cyber, go do cyber stuff. But then I asked the next question. This is the one that people push back from the table a little bit. I said, but is the Department of the Navy going to consider it a core competency in the way that we're going to deliver effects against our adversaries? You get a little, right? Core, is it a core mission set? And what I would argue is when you talk to the other services and ask a similar question of their cyber professionals, hey, does your service consider this a core function? Is it a reason that they get out of bed in the morning to get better at this? The respective cyber communities, of course, you know, Fleet Cyber, Army Cyber, Marfor Cyber, 16th Air Force, yes. Those individuals get up every morning and try to continue to professionalize and advance the art. But are they, the question is, how well are they doing collectively amongst their services as being kind of seen as equals, being seen as the way that this service is going to deliver effects against our adversaries? And I would argue we're struggling there. So when you talk about how is cyber seen as professionalization, I always throw it back to this community, because we're not talking about zero trust. We're not talking about crypto modernization. We're not talking about identity management, which are the things that we spend all the time in the world talking about at these security conferences, because that's what they are. And I make the joke, if I get asked to talk about zero trust one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind, right? Because it's just, that's the buzzword, zero trust, right? And then everybody's talking about it, but that is important. There is no question that zero trust is something that we have to get better at and something that will ultimately be rolled out in the environment. But that's foundational to what we do. Again, I always drive it back to, well, what is the warfighting component of this? So let's talk about the principal cyber advisor, for example. So again, another creation, Congressman Langevin was one of the authors of the NDA language that established the principal cyber advisor position in the first place. The three of us, four of us, if you count OSD, have only been around for about 18 months. Admiral Jeff Scheit, who's the deputy principal cyber advisor at the OSD level, myself for the Department of the Navy, Miss Wanda Jones-Heath for the Department of the Air Force, and Michael Suhlmeyer, who's new into the position, who actually is a Cybercom alum, who's just taken over as the Army Principal Cyber Advisor. Well, what's our jobs in the organization? So per the NDA language, if anybody's ever read it, we have three basic functions that we perform. We advise our service secretaries, so we are the voice to our respective secretaries for all things cyber. We oversee the implementation of DoD cyber strategy across the services and departments. And then our only little superpower is we get to weigh in on the adequacy of the cyberspace activities budget, which for the Navy is about $2 billion. So as the PCA, again, I don't control any of that money. So for any of the vendors here, I have zero resource authority. So I can't do anything for you other than put you in front of people that maybe do have the money. But I get to weigh in on the adequacy of that budget. And are we adequately resourcing the things that we're trying to go do? We'll look at a budget of the Navy that's about roughly 180 some odd $1 billion. And we spend 1% of that on cyberspace activities. And of that, less than a third of it goes to this community. And it struggles for more money. Now why is that? And I'm going to go back to what I affectionately refer to as my question number 2. You know, is this going to be core to the way that we're going to present effects to our adversaries in the future? And it comes down to this word that I like, it's credibility. Right? This space, in my humble opinion, again, I hope I'm not offending anybody in this space, we're still struggling for credibility amongst our other peers. Because everybody has seen the movies, the delivering of kinetic attacks, right? We see it all the time. And everybody knows how to deliver a tomahawk, how to fire a 5-inch gun for an A-10, whatever the Army does. I know they do some things. No offense to the Army, tanks and stuff. So we see that, we can visualize, we can count it. We're struggling seeing non-kinetic effects, although we've seen them demonstrated by other people, right? We've seen what the Ukraine's done, you know, solar winds. And I would argue when we talk about cyber attacks, which I'm going to go down a rant on the word cyber attack here in a minute, it's us being able to credibly present those capabilities to leaders for them to be able to count on. And I said the three things, so I'm always, particularly in the Navy, I talk to the cryptologic warfare officers and the cyber warfare engineers, which is unique to the Navy. And their whole role, particularly the cyber warfare engineers, just exists to build tools, build capability. And I said, guys, you got to help me on this one, because you've got to help me present the capability to leaders who don't understand this in a way that they can understand it, that it shows credibility. It shows that when I push the button, it works, it delivers the effect that you promised. I know there's lots of struggles with that. You know, the adversary can change configurations. I got all that. There are problems. This is a hard problem. But until we can begin to prove those things, we're going to struggle. So my little call to arms for this community is help me prove three things. Build capability that is credible, i.e. it does what we say it does. Build it in a way that it can be synchronized with other other effects, i.e. I can deliver a non-kinetic effect at the same time I'm trying to deliver a kinetic effect, and then present it in a way that it's on call. So I can have it when I need it, not necessarily when it's available. Those are tall orders. Don't get me confused. None of that is easy. And it's very, very challenging, but it's the things that we have to figure out if we're going to be, given a legitimate seat at the table. So now I'm going to go on my cyber attack rant for just a minute. Because we are professionalizing this space, I think we need to professionalize the way we talk about it. We use the word cyber attack too often, too loosely. Everything's a cyber attack. Admiral Trusser was given a talk not too long ago, and he said, oh, the national NCDOC fends off 3,000, 10,000 cyber attacks a day. I said, do they? If they do that, what are we all doing here? If we're being actively attacked in cyberspace, why are we in this room right now? Because we use that word too loosely. I'm a big fan of the Talon Manual. Anybody Talon Manual fans here? The guys that read the Talon Manual? So I was a fan of the Talon Manual from the beginning. It's my little catcher in the rye book I carry with me everywhere. And the two rules that I like talking about the most is cyber attack. I think it's Rule 91, the new version. It might be a different number, and a cyber weapon. And a cyber attack, the way that we should be defining this, the way that we should be using the word, is a cyber attack is something that is specifically designed to kill or injure personnel or damage or destroy equipment. That's a cyber attack. A cyber weapon is something designed specifically to deliver that effect against either personnel or equipment. So if we could go and look at cyber attacks that we've seen in the country, Stuxnet, yes. Saudi Aramco, yes. Sony, yes. What the Ukrainians just did recently against critical infrastructure, yes, yes. Yes, squared. Those are cyber attacks. Everything else isn't, in my opinion. And I think we, as professionals, we need to be able to come up with a lexicon that defines that. Because at C, we would quantify, I use for any of my SWOs in the room. There's a much difference when my electronic, my Slick 32 signals, I've been just pinged by a surface search radar, a Furuno, and a fire control radar. Those are two very, very different things. And the crew would react very, very differently in those two situations. One is you are legitimately being attacked. The other, there's another ship out here navigating, and I might not like the fact that he sees me. Maybe I don't want to be seen, but it's certainly not an attack. So how do we continue again? And I throw the sort of the gauntlet down to us as a community and say, how do we professionalize this space? How do we get a seat at the table? Because I'll be honest with you, in some degrees that we're losing. And as a whole nation approach, there's things that we're doing. CISA stood up, and that's great. What Mr. Inglis is doing is fantastic. But when walking around the halls of the Pentagon, this community is struggling for relevancy inside the mission space. Now, people would say, so Chatham House rules, I might be in trouble for this one because it's not Chatham House rules. So hopefully this doesn't get too far back. But we have to figure out how to get this seat at the table and then resource it appropriately, right? Because that's the Pentagon game. That's the Pentagon wars. It's how do we derive resources to this mission space? I'm sure all of you are aware of General Nakasoni's efforts with enhanced budget control and the things that they're trying to do. And to one degree or another, I applaud him for his efforts. The services have, in one way, shape, or form, failed to present what they promised to him for him to be successful. And now he's off on his own to try and figure out how to do it. And going after resources the way that he has to go after that. Of course, the services all see this as his own little mafia, coming in to try to capture things, and it hurts all, taking my money. Well, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain and present forces like you said you would. So now I have to figure out. I have a mission that he has a mission that he's responsible for doing. He's got to go figure out how to resource that mission, which is rinse and repeat, right? That is life in the Pentagon, trying to figure out how to. And everybody has a problem. Everybody needs a resource. Everybody's needs another dollar. But because this mission is relatively new, if you think about it, right? We've only been around for a decade or so. If we're going to use the founding of U.S. Cybercom as sort of that pivotal moment that sort of constitutes, hey, the Title 10 cyber force is here now. And then, so we're sort of a decade into it. But when we talk about cyber as a means and methods of warfare, the other thing that frustrates me, and we have to figure out how to get past this one as well, is we tend to, every time we say cyber, we got to go into a skiff. We got to go, we can't talk about this openly. I said, all right, well, guys, it's kind of in our face every day. We just created something called US Cybercom. And in 2016, when we established the mission force, one of the areas of expertise, he said, we do offensive cyber operations. Okay, that would imply there's some tool that would enable us to do offensive cyber operations. So why can't we talk about this more openly? Again, the professionalization of the space. And the thing that frustrates me about this, and we were having a discussion about this last night over a bourbon or many, you know, we have things like the Columbia class submarine. I can't tell you how quiet it is because I don't know. I just know that it is quiet. I can't tell you how deep it dives. I know it goes under the water, but I can tell you that what it's designed to do is kill hundreds of millions of people. That's its purpose. As a deterrent, nobody wants to turn the key. Nobody wants to push the button, but we have lots of those things. And we talk about that openly. We talk about nuclear warfare openly, the means that we have to do, nuclear deterrence. But when we talk about cyber as a means and methods of warfare, we all clutch our pearls. We all have to go talking with Skip and Chris. We can't talk about that openly. We have to change that lexicon because that is part of the reason this mission is struggling within the Department of Defense, because everybody wants to talk about it behind a green door. So, and we're guilty of that because, you know, our heritage, our legacy, the way most of us started was in the intelligence community. And that's the way that we were raised and trained and closed-lipped and, you know, secrets. We have our secrets. We can keep our secrets. We're not going to talk about how we do these things, the kinds of vulnerabilities we're researching, the kind of things that we want to aim these capabilities against. But the idea that we're doing these things has to be talked about more openly. So, you know, it's up to all of us to champion this warfare domain with all the other services, because we all know that there's a cost savings factor. You know, we can do cyber for fractions of a dollar compared to what it costs to build a Ford aircraft carrier or a Columbia class submarine or a joint strike fighter. I used to make the joke about submarine guys, you know, the money that we spend on torpedoes. I'm like, guys, you know, we haven't fired a torpedo since 1945, right? In anger, we have not used that weapon system in, you know, rapidly approaching 3/4 of a century. We have lots of them and we practice to use them all the time. But cyber, you know, when we talk about means and methods of warfare, the Ukrainians and the Russians share a border, so it's easy to have a kinetic fight. But when we look at conflict with Russia, if it were to escalate and bring us into it, or in the Indo-PACOM theater with the Chinese, we don't share borders. You know, how do they deliver effects against us? And it's in this space. So everything that Chris Inglis said is important. Our critical infrastructure, the way that we do business, has to be shored up, has to be resilient, has to be survivable. I'm not taking anything away from that. But unless we're going to go into a shooting war, and shooting wars escalate to something very, very ugly, particularly in that theater, very, very quickly, I believe this is the competition space. This is where we're going to play. And again, we have to get better at it. With that, I wanted to take questions, really, to have a dialogue, a conversation, gripes that the community has, sort of messages or hills I can charge at the Pentagon for the community. I talk a lot about the information warfare community, the Navy specifically, and what they need to do. Question, yeah. Yes. 100% yes. And I'd be the first one to vote for it. And I'd be the first one to want it to happen because, you know, we need somebody to get up in the morning, and when they go to work, it's the only reason that organization exists. And until that happens, this mission is going to continue to struggle for relevancy across all the other domains.
If you could just repeat the question.
Oh, so the question was, should there be a cyber service? And I emphatically said yes. And I will drive aggressively for that. Sure.
Thank you for speaking today. Can you compare your position in the Navy with other service principal cyber advisors? How are they different? Any differences in there?
No, so there's a funny C story that goes into that. So when they created the principal cyber advisors, nobody wanted us here, right? It was just another cyber position created by Congress. Nobody wanted us here. And then, so the running joke was, we were like the three little pigs. So Wanda Jones Heath is in the House of Stone. The Air Force accepted and kind of acknowledged they were going to do this immediately. The Air Force is sort of the most embracing of the concept of the principal cyber advisor. The Navy PCA, I'm kind of in the house of wooden straw. It's accepted, it's acknowledged, but it's, you know, and it's struggling a little bit. The Army PCA started behind the 8 ball a little bit. But but Michael's there now, and he's in a different situation. But we all kind of came to the game with different backgrounds. I used to say, if you put the 3 of us or the 4 of us, when you bring Admiral Scheidt together into the thing, we create like this perfect animal. Because we all come from slightly different backgrounds. Wanda's a traditional government employee. She understands cybersecurity very well. She understood how to build an organization in the Pentagon, and she was great at that. Terry Mitchell, who was the first Army PCA, came from a very heavy acquisition background, ISR SIGINT. So he really knew how the money game in the Pentagon worked. And I was really the only one on the team that came from a cyber mission background. And for those of you who don't know my background, I was at Cybercom, working for Colonel Jameson at the time, and General Walsh was there as well. Running I ran the China OPT, deployed to Iraq. So I was the only one that really came from mission. But when you got the 3 of us together, we really complemented each other very well. And in the process of them trying to kill us off, while the first year of our existence was really just to survive. And we all survived year 1 and got staffs and got a little bit of resourcing to support our organizations. And we're thick as thieves. I mean, we talk all the time because we know we need to. And particularly for things like, you know, should there be a cyber service? I'm not going to say the other PCAs are as adamantly in supportive of that idea as I am, but we talk about it. And these are one of the things in Congress, when you look at the language, you know, I think you'll see some things in this next NDAA that asks us to reevaluate how we're doing the organization of the cyber mission across the Department of Defense. I think you're going to see some things being made, because I've actually told this to General Nakasone, you know, when you look at the way that we do cyber, it's sort of peanut butter spread across all the services. Everybody kind of has the same responsibility to present forces, and then are going down their own initiatives to do what I call service retained cyber teams. The Marine Corps has a very, very mature way of looking at this with their Marine information groups. You know, the Army and the Air Force both have some sort of service retained team. The Navy is about to do a similar service retained function. But, you know, when you look at, you know, force composition, I said, you know, the Army doesn't build submarines, the Air Force doesn't build tanks, you know, but yet we all have a very similar responsibility in this space. Should that be reevaluated? Should that be looked at differently? Should the onus for maybe strategic maneuver in cyberspace be a service responsibility? I personally think the Army is doing a very, very good job with embracing cyber, at least culturally, in their service with the Army Cyber Center of Excellence, Army Cyber, the cyber branch. I really tip my hat to the way the Army is going about doing this. The Navy could learn a few things from that. The Marine Corps is doing fantastic in this. General Heritage, Task Force Aries, they're making some awesome improvements, but they're Marines and they do what they're told. And they're really good at it. So yes, answer that. Sir.
One of the things that we do get those the DoD customers, so we're trying to figure out how we best move that concept. So haven't stepped up yet, so we're still trying to figure out which flag or SDS would be the
No, and sorry, in the Coast Guard, I mean, the Commandant signed the Tri-Maritime Strategy with the Commandant of the Marine Corps and the Chief Naval Operations. So when they have our maritime discussions, it's 100% Coast Guard is absolutely at the table. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your first CPT, or you've got a couple CPTs now, and you're standing up a CMT, from what I understand. Yeah, so that's great that the Coast Guard's not only going to do the protective mission, but try to get into some of the more aggressive pieces of the mission as well. So the Navy, no Navy people throw things at me. The Navy doesn't do IO particularly well, right? The Navy does cyber okay, but IO I wouldn't call it. It's something we're trying to get better at. The other services, I think, embrace the construct of information operations a little more strongly. For instance, the Marine Corps with their Marine information groups. If you look at the way they're constructed, part of the construct is to have a component that does inform, to influence, and deceive. So it's part of the mission set, along with offensive, defensive, cyber, and the traditional IT things with network management and, situational awareness. But they're incorporating that whole discipline into these, again, these things they call marine information groups that will serve at the MEF level. The Navy is beginning to follow, I would say, follow that path with the way that we're going to expand upon the information warfare commander afloat, which is really where we see as we build what we're calling non-kinetic effects teams that will go to sea and really kind of be under the umbrella of the information warfare commander afloat. They'll begin to, I think, follow and embrace more of the IO principles, but the Navy's got a little ways to go there. But I think to answer your question, it's incredibly important because what is the force part of cyber? Maybe it's using cyber to deliver a message that's going to influence somebody cognitively as opposed to do that. Again, that whole force paradigm, it doesn't always have to be destructive if I'm just trying to, influence or inform or deceive. So it has to be integrated. Well, so I think that's part of the conversation that needs to change a little bit. There will be parts of the mission set there are unattributable, but then then I'm going to go really down the laws of armed conflict, rules of engagement. Part of the thing that defines that says to be a combatant or a uniform combatant, you have to conform to you have to wear a uniform, you have to be identified at a distance, you have to carry arms openly, and you have to be led. Some sort of you got to stop. You fall under some sort of leadership. Okay, well, what does carry arms openly in cyber look like? Is there even a way to do it? In the future of warfare, do cyber effects need to have hey, from U.S. government stamped on the rear, with love, right? Sir. Yeah.
Talking about the use of the body exterior, and that builds the problem. Talk about the effect, talk about power, talk about the hospitals and parking and how it's done. If you want anything else, if you want to watch the YouTube, I'm not going to step time. During the 2016 election, if you get it from the top, like you can sit there and see that reason and go, holy cow. So you don't have to talk about this with you, how about, but that same thing with the serious action. Here's how we avoid secondary and third. And we got it at the end. We didn't talk about the recon that we've done to do that. We can do that same thing. We just need to.
Yeah.
But we did, right? We
Yeah.
did it with the 2016. We need to be able to pull that out and be able to spot that in a timely fashion and build that. It's not going to surprise the Russians that impact on their left.
Well, and on that note, we were talking about this last night. When we talk about the spectrum of weapon systems, right? And I mean weapon systems. And I'd say on the right-hand side, you got the Joint Strike Fighter, which are arguably the most sophisticated weapons platform we have right now. Submariners might argue that point, but but on the other side of the spectrum, you have the Marine Corps entrenching tool, right? You have a shovel that given to somebody with an opposable thumb in the Constitution to use as a weapon. It is also a weapon, right? Given in the hands of a weapon system that is a Marine. Right, so, but I've got this huge continuum, and I've got rifles and artillery and tanks and submarines and nuclear weapons on the one side. And on the very, very far side of that, I want those to be as tightly controlled as possible, right? Nuclear weapons, absolute Stuxnet, right? Whatever the Stuxnet version of the way we would deliver effects against our adversaries. That one's way over on the right-hand side. Positive control under a button with glass on top of it and only push it the direction after running through an NSPD 13 cycle at the direction of the president, and General Nakasone command and controls that. But maybe on the other end of the spectrum, I've just distributed denial of service attack. I have a Nessus, right? And I can give Nessus to a monkey or a Marine or a soldier, right? And that's easy. And say, hey, when you're told to scan through this IP range very aggressively, right? And that effect goes away when I turn the Nessus scanner off. But that's a tool that theoretically I could give to somebody at the tactical edge because it's not Stuxnet. Right? It's not gonna get out. It's not gonna morph. It's not gonna take down the whole, interwebs. But how do we develop tools that sit on this end of the spectrum that I could talk about openly? I could talk about DDoS all day long. It's not a secret, right? And it works. and I can train people to use that. I can talk about doing distributed knowledge service attacks. There's no real secret there. Stuxnet, yeah, I'm not gonna talk about that. It's gonna be way over here. So we're running on time. Oh, all right, no. So yeah, but again, this goes back into the professionalization of this space. And to say, we've got things way over here that we're not gonna talk about, that sit in a lab somewhere that we're gonna only break out in case of, super hostilities. And then I got things over here that maybe I can talk about. I can show you, I can demonstrate we have the ability to use these tools. But again, that's on us.
And with that, sir, thank you very much for your comments.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.